Good afternoon. Oh, all right. Good afternoon, everyone. Normally, if you know me, you know that really, really bad of me, but I rarely drink water. But I'm fighting a cold right now, so I'm actually going to try to drink water because my mouth is really dry because I took medicine. And so, you're mic'd, and I might have to blow my nose, and so that's in the back of my mind, too. So excuse me if I have to do that, but... it's been a super, super busy week. As you know, Pastor Q and Joy are away this weekend. They're having a glorious time in New York City at this fabulous conference that I was privileged to go to 2 years ago. And they're there this weekend with Heidi Baker and Bill Johnson and just all of the likes. And they're just having a fabulous time, I know. But he comes back today. It's been a really, really long week. I don't know if you guys knew, but Alex had a tough week too because the college group, young adult group, had their retreat this past weekend. They were up at Anna Prayer Mountain or Prayer House. Pastor Joey Wandler from California flew in for the weekend, and so we were very honored to see him and hear him speak. So that was good. I took my girls up on yesterday morning to just see them. So just a lot has been happening. We went to see James and Erin and pray for Erin on Friday night. She's been in and out of the hospital. Just being there with some of the other ladies from Covenant and being able to just lay hands on her and pray for her it just made such a difference than praying from afar. But to be able to go and be, in that home with her husband James and Shannon, and to actually touch her and lay hands on her, I just truly felt God's presence, felt the power of the Holy Spirit, just the healing power come over her, and it just blessed us, those of us who were able to go and pray as well. It was amazing. So we hope to go and pray. If anybody is interested, it doesn't have to even just be women. We can all pray, of course. So if you are interested and have a heart, if God is prompting you to pray for Aaron and also Rana, let's not forget Rana, please let Brian, who is our prayer ministry leader, know, or Ginny. Ginny is kind of spearheading prayer for Aaron, but please let us know because we're going to be going again. And it was just a really rich time of praying for them. As you know, Pastor Q has been preaching a series through the Gospel of Mark. There was rumor that he had finished his series, but it was just a rumor because he's continuing on. He sent me an email saying, this is my preaching schedule for the next couple of weeks. So I think on Instagram it said, he finished up today on his series of Mark. Pastor Q and I both saw the Instagram and said, who says you're done? And he was like, I'm not done. So whoever's been updating Instagram, he's not done. He's got several more lessons out of Mark. So usually I preach once a month or so. It depends if Pastor Q's out of town or for other reasons I may get an opportunity to preach more than that. But usually it's once a month. And I've been thinking about, sometimes we coordinate our preaching so that I'm in line with the series, like through Mark, or last time we did, I think, Ephesians, and we did Luke, where we're preaching little chunks of text as we go through the book. But I've been thinking that I'm going to do my own series this time. I'm going to break from Pastor, I'm rebellious here. No, I'm going to break and not follow Pastor Q in the book of Mark, but I was thinking, and I've been thinking about doing this for a while now, and I think I'm going to do it, where I'm going to do my own series. And so since I only preach about once a month or so, you're only going to get it for the next couple of months, just once. But what I wanted to do was, instead of through a book, I'd like to highlight someone from the Bible. I don't know if Pastor Q's ever done that before, but preach a series highlighting different Bible characters. So that's what I would like to do, is highlight various characters, different people from the Bible, and just to be able to, through their lives, through what we know about them in the Bible, what's written about them in the Bible, I want to be able to try to glean some truths, some revelations from their lives, from some lessons that we can learn, encouragement that we can gain from the lives of these great heroes of faith in the Bible. And not all of them may be heroes of faith. They may be there as an example of what not to do or something like that. I'm not sure yet. I don't have a list of who I'm choosing to preach on, but that's what I would like to do, is each time that I preach for the next couple of months, highlight someone, a biblical figure, someone from the Bible. And so today, I want to begin with, if you can see up here, it's Moses. Resolutions from the life of Moses. Moses I chose first because he is one of the greatest characters of all time. one of the greatest characters of the Bible. I mean, before they came out with the Noah movie and before they came out with, like, there's been a lot of recent movies, right? Popular movies, biblical type big movies. But the old standard is what? The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston. That's the standard. I mean, people, they may not know any other character, but because that in itself was a big Hollywood production, everybody knows the Ten Commandments and Moses, let my people go. I mean, everyone knows that. So he's a big deal, one of the greatest characters of the Bible. He's the one who led God's people out of slavery and into freedom. They were enslaved for over 400 years. He's the one who challenged the greatest nation of the world at that time, which was Egypt. He's the one that God gave the Ten Commandments to, right? That's a big deal. And he's generally credited with authoring the first 5 books of the Old Testament, collectively called the Pentateuch. The first 5 books, authorship is given to Moses. And some of the most memorable Bible stories from Sunday school. If you guys grew up in the church and you all went to Sunday school, some of the great stories that we remember are such. Everybody knows, right? Moses and the burning bush. Everybody knows just that title, Moses and the burning bush, and it just, the story of that. This is a picture of Moses parting the Red Sea, right? All the people walking between the waters rising up and, making that great trek across through the water. This is a famous one. The Ten Commandments, right? When Moses receives it, also when he cracks them. And so Moses and the Ten Commandments is also a really, really big one. Now, why do you think that God used Moses in such an awesome and mighty and huge way? Why did God choose to use Moses? Well, looking over his life, we can see that Moses made certain decisions. There was things about his life, and you could tell from the title, certain resolutions that he made in his life, choices that he made in his life that altered his destiny. He could have gone one way, but there were certain choices that Moses made in the Bible story that really set him on course to be this great, awesome, and mighty man of God. One of the greatest gifts that God has given us people, is the freedom of choice. God has given us free will, and God has given us the freedom of choice. But unfortunately for us, our greatest gift is oftentimes also our greatest curse. A lot of times we wish, haven't you been in situations where you wish that you didn't have a choice and someone would make the choice for you? How many of you guys have ever been, and just think, whatever situation where you had all these options, all these choices, but you actually wish that someone would just choose for you, right? And this is kind of a side thing, but recently my friend said that she read somewhere that if you had a choice between having to give up for the rest of your life, salt, carbohydrates, or sweets, which would you choose? For the rest of your life, you couldn't have any of it in your diet. Salt, carbs, or sweets, sugar and sweets. Which would you choose? And my friends were like, oh, I'd choose this, I would choose this. And I'm thinking and thinking and thinking. And if you know me, I love my white rice. I love, love, love my white bread. Love it. I cannot not eat rice and bread. So carbs, no, I can't not choose that, right? And then salt, I grew up, my mom's cooking is very salty and very spicy, And so everything, I've got to add salt, I've got to add spice to it. I just have to. So I was like, salt, no. Sugar. You know what my favorite food is, right? Donuts. Thank you, daughters. My daughters know donuts. Mommy loves donuts. That's a food group category in itself. I love donuts. I've always loved donuts. Always, always, always. Anytime I drive, and I see, ooh, donut shop. Ooh, donuts. So donuts is a favorite. So I can't give up sweets either. And so I said to my friends, I was like, you know what? Someone has to choose for me. I said, I honestly cannot choose between salt, sugar, and carbs. I can't. So I would rather that someone make the choice for me, and then I would just give it up because I had no choice. I have to, give it up because that's what was chosen for me. So in that respect, what I mean is that, we have choices. We have freedom to choose, free will. And sometimes it could be our greatest to our detriment because we're not always wise, and we're not always smart about the choices we make. We make a lot of dumb choices. lot of stupid choices that we have made in life. That if we were to look back on it, we'd be like, oh man, if God had just removed that choice from my hand to begin with, I wouldn't have made the wrong choice, or I wouldn't have made that stupid choice, right? So it could be a blessing and a curse. Every year in January, people make these new choices. They're called New Year resolutions. New Year's resolutions every January. The word resolution means a firm determination to do something. So in January, when you make a New Year's resolution, you're making a firm determination that I'm going to do something, right? You determine that this year I'm going to change, I'm going to do this. Or this year I'm going to change, I'm not going to do that, right? Those are resolutions. And by looking at Moses' life, we can see 4 resolutions that we can make today that can change our lives. By looking at Moses and the choices he made, I want to be able to bring it to us and how it bears and how it applies to us today and how it can change our lives by these 4 resolutions. A pastor once said, "What happens to us in life is not nearly as important as the choices we make. We can't control what's going to happen to us, but we can control how we respond to what happens to us. Our character is the sum total of our choices." I really like that. Our character is the sum total of our choices. Think about all the choices. What makes you you? It's the sum of all the different choices that you've made in life. It culminates in who you are today, if you think about it. So open your Bibles to Hebrews chapter 11. If you have your Bibles, Hebrews chapter 11, or open your Bible app. Hebrews chapter 11, verses 23 to 27. 23 to 27. Now here in Hebrews 11, we have about 5 verses, if you look, 5 verses on the life of Moses that explain the choices that he made. The first verse is going to be about the choice that his parents made when he was a baby. So it's not a choice that he made, but it's a choice that his parents made when he was a baby. Then the next 4 verses are about the choices that Moses made. Now, I'm going to pause here and just give you a bit of a background on Moses, just in case you didn't know this. But most of you are familiar with the story of Moses. Now, Pharaoh was afraid that the Israelites, that the Hebrew people, they were becoming too numerous in Egypt. Remember, they were all brought over and they all became slaves in Egypt, but they were growing, they were multiplying, and they were getting more and more numerous. And so Pharaoh started getting a little bit worried because the population was exploding. And then he was thinking, well, maybe if they get to be too many, these Hebrews, they will become unmanageable. They might even revolt against the leadership, right? So he was getting a little bit worried. So what he did was he made a decree that all boy babies were to be killed. And that was a form of population control, but also showing, their power and might, right? So he decreed that all boy babies were to be killed. Moses' parents, they decided, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to let that happen to our little boy. And they believed that Moses was special, that God had a plan and a purpose for their little one. And so they weren't going to let him be killed. So what they did was, and you know the story, there's famous pictures and paintings of this too, they placed their baby Moses in a basket, and they let the basket drift down the Nile River. And as it drifted in the Nile River, it was near where Pharaoh's daughter and her friends, they come out to bathe. And so she's out there bathing, and she sees this basket drifting along. And of course, she goes out to see what's in this basket, and she sees a baby. She sees a baby. And she decides, Pharaoh's daughter decides that she's going to keep this baby and raise the baby as her own. Now, that's how this slave baby becomes the grandson of the mighty and great Egyptian Pharaoh. He's a Hebrew child, but that's how he becomes, and he gets raised and nurtured in the Pharaoh's own household. But nobody knows that he's actually Hebrew. Nobody knows that he is an Israelite. So let's read through this now that I've given you some background. Hebrews 11, 23 to 27. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born, because they saw he was no ordinary child, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than all the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to his reward. By faith, he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. In this passage, there are 4 verbs. It says, by faith, Moses, let me back up. It says, by faith, Moses refused. It says that he chose, the underlined words, that he regarded, and that he also persevered. 4 verbs here. So here's the first resolution that I want to look at. The first resolution, the 4 resolutions we'll look at here. The first one is that he refused to be defined by others. Now, God did not create you to be what someone else wants you to be. I know that your parents may beg to differ because they had a path set for you. They knew what career you were going to take. They knew who you were going to marry. They knew, all this stuff and your occupation and things like that. But that's not true. God did not create you to be what someone else wants you to be. Moses had an identity crisis. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. That's what he was known as, the son of Pharaoh's daughter, right? Grandson to Pharaoh. But he refused to be known by that. And he had an identity crisis. As I explained earlier, he was born of Hebrew slaves, but was raised as Egyptian royalty, the grandson of Pharaoh. And he had to decide who he was. He had to decide. And of course, this decision would greatly affect the course of his life. It would greatly affect his destiny, as I said. And Moses had 2 choices. One, he could go on living and pretending to be Pharaoh's grandson, enjoy the good life, the palace life, the riches, the lifestyle, the privilege, everything that comes with royalty. He could, continue to live that way. Or he could admit and come clean about his birth, that he was a Jew, that he was a Hebrew. And then he would be disgraced, he would be humiliated, and he would have to live a slave's lifestyle. Go from royalty, royal lifestyle, palace living, to one of the slaves that are out there making, brick and building and working and doing all that hard labor. That's huge. That's huge. But that's what he chose. What would you choose? What would you choose? There's so many movies, modern day stories about how, someone's born in an orphanage or something, and or they're left at an orphanage, and then later they've discovered that they're really the long lost daughter or long lost son of some millionaire and some rich person, or long lost son or daughter of a king. Like, I don't know why I'm thinking about Tangled. Tangled, where she's stolen by that witch lady, and she's raised as being her daughter, but it turns out that she's really the lost princess, and so there's a lot of modern tales and fairy tales and stories about that. So kind of like that. What would you choose if you were found out that this is your life, but then you are actually royalty, or that you are actually something else, or that your parents were super wealthy or something like that? Well, here Moses refused to live a lie. And looking at verse 24, it says that he refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He refused. He could have kept quiet, but he didn't. He insisted on being what God made him to be. So here's the question for us today. Who are we letting define our identity? Who are we letting define our identity? As Asians, most of us are Asians. There's a lot of that whole Asian thing, again, like I said, where our parents put pressure on us to be one thing or another. But it's not even just our parents. It could be your friends. Your friends are going a certain way, and the certain group of friends that you are with, that you're a part of, are a certain way, right? And that kind of defines who you become, and that kind of defines who you are. What about culture? We allow culture, social media, things that we see, things that we read. We allow culture to dictate who we are and define who we are, define our choices for us and things like that. The mass media. There's so much influence all around us. Who is it that we are letting define our identity? Let me read to you some verses from the Bible regarding this. 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4 says, "Our purpose is to please God, not people. He is the one who examines the motives of our hearts." In John chapter 17, verse 16, it says, they are, and this is Jesus saying this about his disciples, talking about his disciples. He says, my disciples are no more defined by the world than I am defined by the world. And we are his disciples. We are to no more be defined by the world than Jesus was defined by the world. It is only when you know who you are that you stop relying on others' approval. You know, when we depend on other people's approval and we seek other people's approval, it says something about us. It's because we don't know who we are. People who are super confident, people who really know, well-grounded in who I am, whose I am, and my identity, people who are super, super confident about that and well-grounded, they don't seek other people's approval. They don't need other people's approval because they are so sure of themselves. So it's only when you know who you are that you stop relying on others' approvals. And this is what Moses did. And this is the first resolution that we all must make, and that is to refuse to be defined by others. Secondly, choose. Choose short-term pain for long-term gain. Now, we all have heard the phrase, no pain, no gain, right? No pain, no gain. Actually, really don't like that phrase because it means you have to suffer before you can, reap the rewards of it. But no pain, no gain. You hear it the most, I think, from training, right? Working out and sports related for some reason. No pain, no gain, push through. A huge part of the problem here is our inability to delay gratification. And I know people say this all the time about how we're in this instantaneous society that we live in where we want everything quickly, we want everything instantly. And this is true. This is true about our finances. It's true about our health. It's true about our relationships. We want everything now. And we want everything to be free, and we want everything to be easy. Nobody wants to work for it. Nobody, in this day and age, things are very comfortable and everything is automated. Nobody really wants to work for things anymore. I don't want to invest my money and watch it grow so slowly at 0.002%. I don't want to watch the growing that slowly and invest it. I'd rather use that money and spend it now. I've got, needs. I've got things that I can spend it on, right? And it's difficult to delay that instant gratification by putting it away in an account that grows, like I said, 0.002% or something. I don't want to diet and exercise for months. I want the perfect body now. Putting in that work at the gym and the dieting and the exercising, all that stuff. No, I want it now. I want a healthy, perfect body now. I don't want to work on my relationships. I don't want to have to work on communication skills. I want the perfect marriage now. In an instant, I would love it if Hoon and I were on the same page, in sync every time. I don't want to work on skills, communication skills, and humility skills, and how to serve one another skills. So oftentimes, the right thing to do is usually the hard thing to do, such as saying that you're sorry, or such as forgiving someone who has wronged you. Look at verse 25. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. And when I think about this, I'm thinking about Peter. Peter who denied that he was one of the disciples. Peter who denied that he even knew Jesus Christ, right? I'm thinking about Christians who deny that they follow Christ because in the face of persecution, they deny Christ, right? When difficulties hit, I'm thinking about those instances. In verse 25, choosing to be mistreated along with the people of God, to identify yourself with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. Right? That's a big deal. It's not the easy road. But we need to start refusing and choosing and taking responsibility for our lives. Who or what are you blaming for your unhappiness? There's so much sadness, depression, unhappiness all around us. People that I talk to, aside from their social media persona, like when you really talk to people, people are not happy. People are not happy with their lives. But usually, the people that I've spoken with, they don't feel that they are to blame for their unhappiness. There's always something or someone causing their unhappiness. It's not just unhappiness because of something they've done or decisions that they've made, but there's someone or something out there that is causing them to be unhappy. But I think that we need to start refusing and choosing to take responsibility for our lives. Do you ever catch yourself saying things such as, if I just had more money, if I just had a better job, if I just had a different family that I had grown into? My noses. If I just had, I don't know, it's this game that we play, if I just had this, if I just had that. All of us go through that, all of us do that. For me, I'm going to be honest, I've said this many times, if I just had a full-time housekeeper that would cook and clean for me, if I just had a full-time housekeeper, then I can do everything else, But if I just had someone who had, dinner ready for me every night so I wouldn't have to cook. And then after dinner, if I had her, the person also clean everything and put everything away every night, that would just be awesome. So I'm guilty of it too, right? Just saying, if I just had more money, if I just had this, if I just had that, right? Well, I like what Pastor Rick Warren of Saddleback says concerning this. He says, quote, "Who are you blaming? What are you blaming for your unhappiness? You are as happy as you choose to be, because happiness is a choice. And so is being close to God." Listen to this. And so is being close to God. You are as close to God as you choose to be. If you're not close to God, guess who moved? God didn't move. God wants to be close to you. If you're not feeling close to God, it's because you have chosen to not be close to God. And you've got to make that choice. God is not running away from you. If you at one time in your life felt close to God, but now you don't, guess who moved? God did not step away and move away from you. He is always where he's always been. Think about that. That's really, really interesting, right? Guess who moved? If you're not close to God, it's because you have chosen to not be close to God. And we've got to make that choice. And like Moses, who chose short-term pain for long-term gain, ultimately his destiny and being what God wanted him to be, instead of living this rich and luxurious life as the prince of Egypt here, there will be many times in our lives when we'll have to make that same difficult choice. But know that the pain that we have to choose is not without its promises. It's not without its promises. I mean, throughout the Bible, there's so many rich promises from God that helps us grow. I mean, Romans 5, verses 3 through 4 is very famous. We can have joy in our troubles because we know that these troubles produce patience, and patience produces character, and character produces hope. It's really for our gain, long term. But this is not going to happen overnight. We're not going to be able to, it's so funny, it's so ironic, because I'm not a patient person. Again, my daughters know when I drive, it makes me crazy, right? And so when I drive and I'm stuck behind a really, really slow driver, especially on 108, because it's a one-lane road. You cannot pass them. There's no traffic light. You're just stuck behind this one person, and it's long. From my house, which is Upper Silver Spring, Olney, to here, it's just one road, 108. That's just the one road that I can take, and it's for several miles, or lots of miles. But when you're stuck behind that one person, my goodness, my blood pressure. And so I am not very patient. But I pray all the time, God, give me patience and give it to me now. And that's the ironic thing. I want instantaneously, I want the gift of patience. I want to be able to be a patient person, but I'm not patient about receiving it from God. It's crazy, right? It's mind games that I play with myself. But that's what I'm saying, right? The reward in heaven, it's not without its rewards in heaven. That it produces patience. Patience produces character. So yes, God really still is working on me and my character. And character produces hope. Character produces hope. And secondly, that he would reward us in heaven. It says here that God will reward, 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17. These present troubles are quite small, and they won't last very long. Yet they produce for us an immeasurably great glory that will last forever. That will last forever. That's awesome. And it goes on to say in verse 17, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is only temporary, our problems and our troubles, but what is unseen is eternal. And that's what Moses did. He sets his sights on what is unseen. Thirdly, the third resolution, almost done actually, regard. Regard was the verb. Regard God's values and not the world's. Regarding God's values and not the world's. Verse 26, he regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt because he was looking ahead to his reward, what I was just saying, looking ahead to an eternal reward. And this is why God used Moses. I asked in the beginning, why? Why did God choose Moses? Why did God use Moses? And the word regarded here means to evaluate, it means to consider, it means to weigh in the balance. So Moses, he weighed in the balance, and he considered disgrace for the sake of Christ to be of greater value. He considered it to be of greater value. He's making a value judgment here. He's clarifying what is important to him, what his priorities are. He's clarifying what matters most to him. So the question, again, I always like to bring it back to us when we read things from the Bible, glean truth for today. The question is, what matters most in your life? What matters most in your life? I know that all of you are going to say family matters most, or I don't know, those of you who are headed for college, getting into a good college matters most to you, various things. But if you had to, right this minute, because I'm asking you to, if I asked you to tell me the top 3 values that your life is based on, what would you say? What are the top 3 values that your life is based on, that you base your life on? Go. I'm willing to bet more than half of you are clueless. If I say, what are the top 3 values in your life that you value, all the decisions that you make in life, how you live day to day, that top 3 values that you hold as your core, what are the top 3 values that you base your life on? I'm willing to bet more than half of you can't think, you're just like, oh no, and you're just scrambling right now and you're at a loss, right? Think about that. If you can't think of what your top 3 values are, then obviously you're not trying to live by them. Because you don't know them, so obviously you're not trying to live by them. And this is the warning to us today. If we don't decide what matters most, others will decide for us. If we don't already know in our minds, like I said about identity, who we are, others will define us. If we don't set in our minds what our top 3 uncompromising values are, what we live our life on based on those 3 values, if we don't decide now and know it to our core, then someone else is going to decide it for us. Whether it be, like I said, social media, your parents, or your friends, someone else will decide for you. The 4th and final one, and then we're done, is to persevere. Persevere. The 4th and final resolution that Moses made was to choose to live by faith and not by fear. To persevere and live by faith and not by fear. Look at verse 27. By faith he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. Think about that. Moses had every reason to be afraid. Remember, Pharaoh was a great, great, and mighty, powerful man in the world at that time. In fact, he was considered to be a god. You know, the Egyptians looked at him and considered him to be a god himself. His word was law. He was considered to be a god. And yet, Moses had no fear because Moses kept his eyes on God, who is love. And perfect love casts out fear. That is my favorite verse. Favorite verse. Perfect love casts out fear. So many of us and so many in the world are ruled by fear. At the core, I asked you, what do you live by? What are the 3 top values? None of you would have said fear as your number 1 value, but that's really what you're living by. No one's going to say it. Oh yeah, I live by fear. My decisions are based on fear. Fear that I'll go bankrupt. That's why I work so hard. Fear that I'm going to catch some sort of illness or disease. That's why I do these things. No one's going to say it, and that didn't come to mind. But in reality, I bet you many of us, that's the value we live by, fear. It's in reaction to fear. Fear about this, fear about that, fear about our life, fear about bad luck, fear about what's going to happen tomorrow, That's what we live by. Fear that we won't have babies, fear that we will never get married, fear that my husband will die. We're really controlled by and our decisions. And really, again, no one says this, but our value for a lot of us is fear. But here, not fearing the king's anger, he persevered because he saw him who is invisible. Perfect love casts out fear. And God is perfect love. Perfect love. And so when we keep our eyes on him, focused and set our sights on God, then we should not fear. Fear is a liar. Fear is a liar. you know? And so we want to keep our eyes focused on Him. And then it would drive out all fear, and we would live for Him, basing our values, our decisions at the core of who we are, our identity on Him. So as the praise team comes up, I want you to think about these 4 resolutions. Think about these 4 resolutions. Refuse, choose, regard, and persevere. Think about these 4 resolutions. And I say to you, which of these 4 do you need to do or make as a resolution? You don't have to wait till next year. You don't have to wait till January. But even today, that we would not just be hearers of the word, but doers of the word. And so even today, if you can make a decision about these 4 resolutions and say, okay, this is what I'm going to live by, and these are the decisions, looking at the life of Moses, that I can learn these truths and that I can make these decisions for myself, to refuse to be defined by others, to choose the short-term pain for the long-term gain, regarding God's values and not the world's, and persevering and not fearing. Today is the first Sunday of the month, and as our tradition here at Hope Church, we celebrate communion together. And so as we have our communion ushers preparing for communion, I just want us to close our eyes. Close our eyes and think again about today's message. And if you haven't yet, to declare that you will not be ruled by fear, that you will not live by fear, but consider what those 3 values are that you want to live by, that every decision that you make for you and your family will be based on what? Based on 3 values, core family values. Talk it over with your husband or wife. Talk it over with your children. And decide as a family, decide as a couple, decide for yourself, or decide with a group of friends if you're single, what your group core values will be, and hold each other accountable. It's only when we share our values and share these words out loud that others can hold us accountable. It's not enough that we know ourselves, but you need to speak it forth, you need to declare it, you need to proclaim it, so that others will know, others will hear, and that they will be able to hold you accountable for that. So just between you and God right now, consider and speak to God about this.